Welcome to Deep Look, Ultiworld's weekly radio show about the current state of Ultimate. I'm the host and the editor, Charlie Eisenhood. Joining me, Ultiworld senior editor Keith Rayner. It is Wednesday, May 17th. The college championships are just about to begin. We've got D3 college nationals coming up this weekend, running Saturday through Monday. And then we've got D1 coming up in just a little over a week, beginning on Friday of next week. That is the 26th, and running through Memorial Day, Monday, May 29th. Keith, this may be the best time of year, at least for you. I know that you can't get enough of the college game.
Yeah, but it feels like just a couple weeks ago we were like, oh, college season hype time, baby. Let's get it rolling. Now we're on the march towards the final 7 days of college play or whatever. So it's not that long till we're crowning national champions, and everybody's groaning because UNC and Middlebury won again.
Don't talk like that, Keith. Don't talk like that. Nothing can be worse than last year's D1 Nationals, which was the most boring college ultimate tournament of all time. So we've got a great show for you. Coming up a little bit later, Mike Ball and Fiona Scotti Nugent will join us to break down all things D3. We've also got a very special interview for you at the end of the show, which we'll reveal a little bit later on. And we've also got a little bit of chatter here. We're going to make our picks, of course, for D3 and all of that. Subscribers, make sure you tune in to our bonus segment Out the Back, where Keith and Mike are going to break down their hashtag The Game Picks. You can go over to ultiworld.com to make the game picks right now. It's super easy. It's super fun. Just pick the teams you think are going to outperform. And Keith, you want to give any other notes on the game?
Oh, I'm going to save. Mike and I go deep on some strategy and some advice.
Love it.
So you're gonna get a lot in there. But yeah, you're just picking 5 teams and then rooting for them to win games. It's not that complicated.
It's not that complicated. Before we get to the college talk, though, we do have a lot going on in the semi-pro leagues right now. So we got a little small ball segment. Keith, take it away.
Well, it's honestly, as we're doing like the show planning here, Charlie, I struggle to figure out what of these stories is the lead story because they all feel so significant. I think maybe we'll start in the Western Ultimate League. So they said the postseason
playoffs.
They said the postseason playoff lineup. And let me tell you, we didn't get our picks right, Charlie. We got some things right. San Diego and Seattle both in. But they'll not be joined by the teams we picked. LA, Oregon. Instead, you've got Utah, who got in at the last minute. I mean, everything came down to the last minute here. And San Francisco. So those are going to be your 4 playoff teams in the Western Ultimate League. Seattle and San Diego, who of course will be the favorites, and then San Francisco and Utah, who fought their way in. And I saw a tweet, I think from Kira Kruznikova, about just how exciting this season's been. I mean, man, there have been so many close games that it gives you a little bit of temptation that maybe we could see some wild stuff in the postseason that didn't feel like it was as present last year.
Yeah, I mean, it's going to be awesome. I mean, we should just quickly touch on the fact that, this Rocky Mountain Rumble 4-game set in Colorado to figure out the last 2 playoff spots, or I should say the last playoff spot. Seattle was already locked it up. Utah comes out in game 1 and narrowly defeats Oregon 13-12. Colorado comes out and beats Seattle. So you're thinking, okay, like Utah still in it, Colorado still in it. And then Utah loses to Seattle, and you're thinking, okay, like here we go. Can Colorado pull it off? And they lose to the Onyx after beating Seattle the day before. It's a wrap. Utah gets through, and
I think Oregon was also still in it. If they had blown out Colorado, they could have gotten in on point diff. I think that was how that broke down. But they needed to win by like 8 or something to get in. But obviously they didn't get that close.
Crazy. So your final lineup in the postseason, the 1 seed in the Northwest is Seattle. The 1 seed in the Southwest is San Diego. The 2 teams that we penciled early on as the top 2 teams in the league look like it. And then Utah and San Francisco getting through. Utah in the Northwest, and San Francisco in the Southwest. So those 4 teams will face off June 3rd and 4th in Seattle. And so we'll get to enjoy all of the action from the championship weekend. Going to be awesome. So I think the plan is that, so it's San Diego's going to face Utah, of course, as across conference games. Seattle will play San Francisco in the nightcap in Seattle. It's, nice to have that. Get the fans out. And then the winners will face off on championship weekend the next day at, I think, 2 p.m. Pacific time. So, yeah, I mean, look, San Francisco for sure is the big surprise to me, Keith. I just didn't think that this team was going to be able to really step up and kind of compete the way that they did this season. And, it was just, I think it's been a really good season. Every team got at least 3 wins. Every single team in the league. And no team got more than 6. There was parity. And I think we could see that play out again at championship weekend.
Yeah, San Francisco, I've trouble dividing how much of it felt like it was them and how much it felt like Arizona and LA just were not quite all the way there. I mean, the point diffs look pretty rough. It's San Diego has a +38 and San Francisco's got a +1 point diff on the year.
Yeah, I mean, I think San Francisco
they ended up 4-4. But you know what?
Destroyed by Seattle.
after last season, I you got to give props to San Francisco, who lost a lot of players and still managed to turn around and play better this year. And they showed they were really scrappy. I think that was true of Utah as well. Both those teams are 4-4 going into the playoffs, but you don't necessarily feel like it's locked up. We've seen inconsistency from Seattle, San Diego, maybe less so, but I think Utah is the stronger of the of the underdogs. So I do think there's some compelling potentials for upsets in these semifinal matchups.
Well, more, of course, on our sister podcast, OOT, and we will talk more about the WL Championship weekend coming up before that championship weekend on June 3rd and 4th. So, Keith, what's next?
Well, Charlie, I think you got to see this one in person. You're on the call for the New York Empire DC Breeze, the long-awaited number 1 versus number 2 in the AUDL, and it went to overtime. So it delivered on all the promises. It looked for a little bit like the Empire might push the Breeze away and kind of walk down to the finish line, but Breeze fight back, and we get a thriller that goes into extras.
Yeah, I mean, it was kind of a crazy game. To be expected, kind of a defensive slugfest. Both teams have very good defenses, very good D lines, but DC was unable to convert on some early opportunities. When they took timeouts and put their O-line in, it didn't work out for them very much. That was a big problem for them, especially in the first half. But ultimately, a couple mistakes late from Jack Williams on a couple of overthrown hucks, and DC able to convert on those opportunities. They end up tying the game. They take the lead. I was talking about on the broadcast how the game felt eerily similar to what we saw in the postseason in the East Final last year. But, DC clawed all the way back in that game and tied it up, but they never took the lead. And New York was able to win on the big Jack Williams to Ben Yot buzzer beater. This time around, DC takes the lead. New York scores on what looked like a situation where they were maybe allowing Jeff Babbitt to get open at the front of the end zone in order to have enough time. But then they had a really weird lineup on the field, and they just didn't do anything on the final possession. They never got the disc past their own brick mark. I mean, it was just completely disastrous. So they end up having to just run out the clock. And they go to OT, and ultimately, Keith, Jeff Babbitt is just a major problem. He is a major problem. He had 7 goals, and almost every single one of them was just across the face of the end zone at the front cone, and there were no answers, even if there were multiple defenders in the area.
Yeah, even the help couldn't do anything. It also didn't hurt to get 3 of their 8 blocks from them. He had almost as many blocks as DC altogether. Babbitt was awesome. And Yacht came up with some clutch plays as well. You're used to these stars from New York showing what they can do. I think that both offenses may be a little disappointing. Maybe that's just in part because they're going up against such tough defenses. I think DC's offense in general just hasn't quite hit the level that we've been expecting of them. Even though I do think that Christian Boxley has been putting together like an MVP caliber season right now. You guys came out with your top 25 players in the league list, and there were a lot of people who were like, where is Christian Boxley? And he is, I don't know if he's on a revenge tour or what, but he has been on one.
I will admit,
DC.
he was not on my list, and it's not that I didn't think he's a great player. I just didn't know that he had this level in him. I mean, I think it's very fair to say that he has been better so far this season than he's ever played before. And I agree with you, Keith. He's been the best player on the breeze, no question.
Absolutely.
One of the best in the league.
Yeah, and he was strong in this game. Big game for Ben Ort too. Although I think he was mostly just getting free in the deep space a lot. Sometimes you need that. But yeah, it turned out to end up being a pretty well contested game. But DC just a little less efficient. Their D line not as effective when they got the turn. You mentioned a lot of that was because they were actually subbing in their O line. So
I think Daryl Stanley made mistakes. I think he should have let the D line run more after the turnovers. I mean, they had the more efficient unit. I think their offense looks better than the O-line's offense right now. So I think it's one thing if you get a block in the end zone and you got to go the full 80 yards the other direction. But when you get a turn on your own half, let them play.
I think there's a lot of folks who feel that way, although many of them are D-line players, so you feel that way in the league. But big win for the Empire. I think DC though can still walk away feeling like, hey, we're challengers. But it's as was noted, I think in the Tuesday toss by Evan Lepler, this New York team is 9-1 in their last 10 games against DC. So it's a rivalry, but one team's gotten the better of it a lot. So DC's got work to do. I definitely feels like they're not anywhere near the best that they're going to be this year, for better or for worse. But there's definitely room for growth on their end. You talk about that last possession and that they pass it to Grayson Allen at the last second. I don't know what's going on over there, but you gotta come up with something better than that. That just looked a little panicked, which is not how you usually think about DC. But the Empire still your favorites. Shocker.
All right, Keith, what's next?
All right. Well, we got to go over to the Premier Ultimate League. Speaking of favorites, and these Northeast powerhouses, not New York this time, DC and Philly. DC Shadow without Claire Trope go out and hand Philly an L, and establish themselves as the clear favorites in both the East and the league. Now, with that win, despite not having Trope on the field, really impressive for DC to come out and push away Philly, who looked really good throughout the beginning of the year, and we'll talk more about this, is at the top of the PUL's outdated power rankings.
If you all missed this, the PUL releases power rankings this week.
Power rankings that decide the wild card spot in the playoffs. So not just like, hey, these are for fun.
So they've got Philadelphia at number 1 in the rankings and DC at number 2. And of course, DC it was almost a blowout. I don't want to quite say it was a blowout, but it was almost a blowout. And it's like, what? So they determined the power rankings last week, and then they just didn't release them last week. So they released them this week, even though they didn't take into account the games from this weekend.
And made that it is, they tried their best to make it clear, hey, we are not accounting for week 7. It says week 6 power rankings. It says in the article, it acknowledges the result of Shadow over Surge and that's not factored into the rankings, but you got to know everybody's going to read it, the top line,
Let me just put it this way. I think this was best summed up by the DC Shadow themselves, who quote tweeted the league releasing the power rankings and just captioned it LMAO. And that's exactly right. LMAO, what are you doing, PUL? This is a total own goal. I do not understand why they did it this way. It would have been very easy to just quickly update these. Just be like, we didn't get them out last week. Let's update them and do them for this week. I don't understand. But anyway, obviously DC is going to be number 1 in the next edition of the power rankings, which come out next week. This doesn't inspire a lot of confidence in the power ranking committee for me, Keith. I got to be honest with you.
It's when you put out an article and the headline is Philly Surge best team in league, and then the first line of the article is but not really. Like, you got to know everybody's going to read the headline.
This is a disaster.
But all that said, I don't know why they didn't come out the week before. That to me is really where it went wrong. Should have come out whenever they were scheduled to come out. But we're now waiting to see what the rankings are going to look like this week, because there's still a big set of matchups coming up in week 8. I mean, it's all but certain that the team that finishes second in the East is going to take that last spot in the playoffs. Even with this, maybe even especially because of the committee plan. So, New York has a lot of work to do if they want to get in that spot. And it starts this weekend with them beating the Shadow, but they're probably gonna need help. I mean, they're going to need like the Surge to start losing, or the Shadow to start losing. Whichever one of those teams is going to finish second, they can't be that impressive. So they're going to need some extra help from some other teams. I think
it's almost a done deal if New York doesn't win it tomorrow or on Friday.
Agreed. They have to beat the Shadow, I think, to even have a shot.
Big game in New York. We'll see what happens. Going to be a fun one. Keith, you're on the call, are you not?
I am. I'm going to be on that one. So join me for a season-defining game for New York.
Should be a fun one. I'm looking forward to being there in Mount Vernon, New York, for that game that is pretty much going to decide New York's season. What a disappointment it will be if they do not make the playoffs. Okay, that is going to do it for this edition of Small Ball. We're going to take a break. When we come back, Mike and Scotti join Keith to break all things down for D3, and I'll be back in a little bit to make my picks as well. Stay with us. You're listening to Deep Look.
Spring college season is here and the warm weather is on its way. That means it's reversible season. Breakmark is giving away free reversibles for teams that order a bundle. With prices starting at just $75, it's the best way to have your team looking game ready this spring. And reorders get a 20% discount. Get started today at breakmark.com. Welcome on the D3 contingent, the hive mind that controls the entirety of D3 secretly, pulling all the strings from behind the scenes. Now, I'm only partially kidding. We have our D3 women's editor, Scotti, joining us, as well as our D3 men's editor, Mike Ball. Welcome to the show, both of you. Happy to have you on.
Yeah, thanks, Keith. Happy to be on. It's our one time a year that the D3 gang gets to take over on Deep Look, and Charlie chose to bail on it, so we have to give him a little bit of hell for that. But thanks for having us on.
Yeah, thanks, Keith. This is actually my first time on Deep Look, so it's a big day for me.
If you think about it, this is really like an intersection of 3 Old 2 World podcasts between Deep Look, Laying It Out, and then RIP to the 7500 Club.
Truly, yeah.
Look, for this next 15 minutes or whatnot, this is the 7500 Club. We're bringing it here. I know Sam Echeverria is going to be at the D3 championships too, so maybe we could record a little pocket episode of the 7500 Club as well at the tournament. We'll see how it all breaks down. But obviously, the big news: D3 college championships coming up this weekend, and we're going to break down who the top teams and players are that people need to be paying attention to, and what we might expect to actually see. And of course, we're going to make some picks and get down to the nitty gritty. Obviously, that's what everybody's here for. But let's start with the title contenders, the top teams. Who are the favorites? So let's start in the women's division, Scotti. I think this is kind of an obvious question for anybody who's paid attention anytime to D3 women's over the past 2 or 3 years. Who feels like the favorite right now in the women's division? And how big of a favorite are we talking here?
Oh, like almost the uncontested favorite is Middlebury. They cleaned up at Centex, which I believe was their season opener tournament. I don't know why they weren't in the D1 division, because they definitely could have done some damage there as well. They're returning pretty much their entire star roster, or maybe not their entire roster, because they definitely had some senior standouts from last year. But, Claire Babbitt Bryan looking for a three-peat pody? I don't know, they're such a strong program right now, and they just really seem to be unbeatable. I love a underdog. I love a upset. So to some degree, I'm kind of looking for a Carleton championship. They were really holding their own against D1 teams at the beginning of this year, so I'm really excited to see how they match up.
Yeah, three-peats are unheard of.
Unheard of.
Here we are. You can't win 3 in a row without becoming the villain. So I'm sure everybody's going to be rooting against Middlebury. Mike, what about on the men's side? Who is the favorite at this point?
Yeah, the favorite on the men's side is also the number 1 overall seed, Colorado College Wasabi. And we actually have the benefit, which is not often the case in D3, where they have played against both the 2 and 3 seed this year in St. Olaf and Middlebury. Facing St. Olaf. It's an early season tournament. I want to say is like one of the Midwest tournaments. Midwest Throwdown, and then facing Middlebury at Centex. And so they have wins over the 2 teams seated directly below them. That being said, they're definitely the favorites. Don't get me wrong, but Wasabi, a lot of their wins over D3 teams are close. Like they have some tight games that they've played. And also, not to like dig up the past on them or anything like that, but they were a Pool 1 seed last year and won their pool last year. They were in Pool D, but then lost in quarters despite having the bye through pre-quarters and lost in quarters. So there is a recent history of a lot of this roster underperforming relevant to expectations or at least falling up a little short. So it would take a big leap to go from losing in quarters last year to then winning the whole thing this year. So there's still a lot left for them to prove, but Lincoln Grench returns. He was an All-American. He had a U24 tryout. Their Donovan nominee, Oliver Kraft, is really good as well. They have some good young talent on their roster as well. They're a deep team. They're also a very big team. Like when you see them warm up, they kind of have that like intimidation factor, I think. And so they're going to be a really good team and deservedly are the favorite, but also still have a lot to prove, especially after last season.
Well, let's stay in the men's division then, because I know you mentioned that they had already competed against some of these teams that are seated right below them. They blew out St. Olaf. I don't know how much you make of that from Midwest Throwdown. And then they beat Middlebury in a really close game. Which of these other teams feels like that they could potentially usurp Colorado College, maybe be that team to take advantage if Colorado College stumbles early in the bracket again?
Yeah. So like, I guess to kind of like lay the picture for D3 men's right now. So like kind of the elephant in the room is that Oklahoma Christian, the 2-time defending national champions, didn't even qualify for nationals despite coming into South Central with 3 bids as the 1 seed. They had a couple injuries, but also just the South Central was a really good region and their results kind of snowballed on them. And next thing they knew, they were eliminated. So the division feels wide open, right? Like that was kind of like what Middlebury is in the women's division. OC was going to be in the men's division. And so the division's wide open. And like, as I was going through to try and like make my picks, like there are a good like 11 teams that I could see making it to semis. So there's going to be a lot of parity, in my opinion, in D3 men's this year. I think there's a level of unpredictability that we're not used to seeing. So that's just to kind of like give some context and like lay the groundwork here. I think the most likely challenger to Colorado College is going to be Middlebury at the 3 seed. We'll talk about why not St. Olaf in a second, but Middlebury at the 3 seed, they came to my tournament early in the year, FCS, and I was talking to their captains and they told me that they created their tournament schedule this year with the desire to lose, not because they're trying to lose games, but because they're trying to test themselves as much as possible. And so they've really invested in their process this year and prioritized development and peaking at the right time and giving their whole roster experience against tough competition. And they seem like the perfect combination of having that top end guys like Max Hanscom, guys like Max Rogers, Ethan Lavalley, as well as Malachi Raymond's a big addition for them as well. And so they have top end talent and depth. And you saw they already played Colorado College extremely tight and only lost by 1. If I had to pick somebody that's going to be the challenger to Colorado College, Middlebury is who I would pick.
Scotti, how about for Middlebury on the women's side? I know you said you're looking for an upset. Who are the teams really, if there's multiple, or who is the only challenger that might be able to take them down?
Well, I think I might have mentioned Carleton College Eclipse. That's who I would love to see, make the upset win. The thing is, like, they are also a very storied program. So it's like, who's going to be like the real upstart that really shows up and like makes an upset. So we just published my article interviewing Williams College. One of their prideful moments of regionals last weekend was that, or maybe the weekend before, that was that they played Middlebury to like the closest game that Middlebury experienced all of that regionals weekend. So, they're definitely like you can compete with them. They're not like that much head and shoulders above everyone else. I know, so like the number 2 seed in their pool is Haverford, who's had a phenomenal season. They absolutely stomped my alma mater, Lehigh, this year multiple times, which was, disappointing to see, but it's kind of, as an alum, but it's awesome to see like another program coming up. And they've definitely been one to watch. So I'm really excited for that game and pool play. Of course, as we've been discussing in the base camp chat, the weather on Saturday is looking like it's going to be rough. And if there's anything that I know about playing D3, it's that the weather is always a factor. So I'm really excited to actually see how that shakes things up as well.
I'm hoping that we don't have to find out how that shakes things up. I hope that it shakes things up not at all and it doesn't happen. Actually, I think I've been pretty lucky as far as like weather this season from a coaching standpoint. So maybe we can have that same luck passed on here. I noticed you didn't mention Wellesley, number 2 overall seed, finalist last year. They kind of came out of nowhere last year. I don't know if that means they can come out this year, but do they have a shot?
So I saw Wellesley play at No Sleep Till Brooklyn, and they are super strong. They kind of have a pretty, they always look to Tess Dolan to score. And while she scored pretty much every single point that they played in that game that I watched against Williams, I think they could give Middlebury a fight. It's just interesting, and I don't know what their strategy was in regionals because I didn't speak to them, but again, Williams played them to a tighter game than Wellesley did. So I'm, I would love to see them, maybe cause an upset, but I'm not entirely sure if they can do it this year. And I hope that they take this as a challenge. And I'd love to see them do it,
All right, so we have our challengers, we have our favorites. Who in the field is a wild card, a dark horse team that's down the line? I know when we get to D3 men's, Mike's already said that the group of teams you can see making semis is deep. How about in the women's division side? When you look down the seedings here, which of these teams jumps out to you?
I think that like I already mentioned Haverford, they're definitely a dark horse. I think that they could absolutely do well. They're seated pretty high, all things considered, but they're second in the pool, and there's such disparity between like the teams that are right at the top of D3 and then towards the middle bottom of the Nationals lineup. So I do think Haverford could absolutely be a dark horse, as well as Mount Holyoke. They have I don't know if she made it. I don't remember if she made a U24 team or if she was just a tryout player. Gigi Downey. Actually, I'm not entirely certain.
I think they made it.
Yeah, and they them pronouns, I believe. So I'm going to correct myself there. But I also heard, about, and here I am talking about New England so much, and I'm trying to spread the love to other regions. But Mount Holyoke's defense is really, really tough to crack. So, defense wins championships. So that could be their dark horse opportunity to capitalize there.
No one can blame you for talking about New England, given how strong they are. I mean, there are teams that are staying in the New England region who didn't even qualify, who could potentially be semi-contenders as far as I could tell. So the can't fault you for that. Mike, how about in the men's side, down the list? What teams jump out at you as maybe underseeded or a team with a high ceiling?
Yeah, I think as far as a team that's underseeded, the most underseeded team is number 11, Navy Poseidon. And they're underseeded because of a couple of like weird losses that really plummeted them in the algorithm. I mean, they got bageled earlier this year at Atlantic Coast Open by Penn State, and like anytime you get bageled, that's just going to be a nightmare on your algorithm ranking. But they were shorthanded at that tournament, and despite being shorthanded, picked up a win over Richmond, who's seeded 5th at this tournament. They also have a win already head-to-head over Kenyon, who's the 8 seed, a win head-to-head over Barry, who's the 13 seed, and then a 2-point loss to the number 4 seed Whitman. And the thing about Navy that makes them fairly volatile, and I've talked to their coach about this a little bit, is that their strength of their team and like what they are intentionally loaded up on is their D-line. They have a solid O-line, right? Like you don't get to nationals without having a solid O-line. So I don't mean that as a slight to their O-line, but more so as praise to their D-line. You know, they've got guys like Max Benedetti and Michael Pyle, who are like among their best players who primarily play D points. And so they go on these crazy runs where they just avalanche teams. And the other side of that is they've dug themselves out of some crazy holes in games as well, where, you know, there were multiple times at FCS where they were down like 8-3, 8-4 at half and battled back to win. But I just look at a team that's seeded 11th. They're the 3 seed in the pool, and they've already shown the ability to beat a top 5 team, hang with the 4 seed in the tournament. Like they've shown that ceiling that they have, that they can get to, and to have that as your pool 3 seed is pretty nightmarish. And I think we're going to have them on stream their game against Williams. That's that 2v3 game in their pool. And Williams is another team that plays very streaky ultimate. They are young and play with a lot of swagger and confidence, and you know, throw daring shots, upside down shots. Like that's going to be a super exciting game to have on stream, because it's going to be 2 teams that go on these big runs, and neither team is ever going to feel out of it. And I think that pool B as a whole is one that's going to be a lot of fun to watch and one to keep an eye on.
Would you say that's the pool of death, or do you think that still falls in the 4-5-9 and pool D?
So the thing about the 4-5-9, I understand why that's labeled the pool of death. The thing about that is like all 3 of those teams are going to get through to pre-quarters, right? Like with all due respect to Rochester, it would be shocking to see Rochester beat either one of those teams. So like, yes, it's the pool of death in terms of battling for that top seed in the pool and earning that bye straight to quarters, but it's also a pool where it would be shocking for the top 3 to not make it through to Sunday and progress their tournament. That pool B is the one that feels the most wide open to me. You know, I've got a piece coming out about Colorado Mines. It might be out by the time this podcast releases, but you know, coming out of the South Central is nothing to scoff at. I mean, that division or that region has had as many as 7 teams in our top 25 power rankings at any given time this season, and so for them to come out as the 3 seed in that region, they're the 14 seed for a reason, right? Like they've got a lot of like blemishes on their resume and losses or close games that are worrisome, but they've also shown, again, at talking about that ceiling, right? Like looking at when a team catches fire, what are they capable of, right? What does their best ultimate look like? And in that pool, you've got as the bottom 2 seeds in Navy and Colorado Mines, teams that have shown that like their top end is being a top 10 team in the division, right? So if they find a rhythm, if they catch fire and reach that top end for a couple of games in pool play, it can throw everything into chaos. And I mentioned briefly St. Olaf earlier. They are, despite being the 2 seed in the tournament, they are a team that I wonder about their ability to progress deep into the tournament from a depth standpoint. They are a very good team, and they have who is probably maybe the best player in this tournament in Will Brandt. You know, he'll be up there in that conversation for sure. But the leader of their D-line, he was an All-American last year, Luke Bleers, is done for the season with an ACL injury. And so they had the fortune at regionals of having a very weak pool and then only needing to win 1 game on Sunday to advance. So they looked very dominant because I think Will was playing both directions a lot based on what I was seeing on their Twitter and such. Obviously I wasn't there, but in a pool where they're not going to be able to coast or have it easy in any games, even if they do manage to win that pool, I wonder what their legs are going to look like and how they're going to be able to carry deep into the weekend without having Bleers, who generated breaks like almost single-handedly a lot for their D-line last season.
All right, Scotti, we heard Mike talk about which pool might be the toughest pool, the pool of death, although he almost sounds like you're calling pool D the pool of life. You know, it's not that somebody's going to die. No one's chance is going to die in that pool, really.
It's the glass half full.
It's the team that's going to have the best opportunity to rise afterwards. So maybe we need a positive reframe. But Scotti, is there a pool of death or a pool of life in the women's division that you would look at? I think
I'm gonna go with Pool D. I hate to be a stereotype here, but we haven't even touched on Portland yet. I'm excited to see what their season record has been phenomenal as well. It makes total sense why they're the 4th seed. Mount Holyoke's in there. So St. Olaf, I believe that they brought Middlebury to Universe Point before like a lightning delay ended Centex early. So I think they might be underseeded. And then Knox was the sole winner of the Great Lakes region. I think another team, and I believe the other pool that's going to be really tough is Pool B, Wellesley and Whitman. Whitman's had a crazy season as well, a really successful season. I think that they like recently dropped back down to to D3, and they're one of several programs that has both the men's and women's teams going. So that definitely brings some momentum as well for Middlebury, Whitman, and Williams, and Colorado College. There's so many teams that have men's and women's teams going that like that type of momentum. Maybe they'll unseat Wellesley, but I'm not entirely sure. If Occidental, now that they've lost Sophia Havranek, now I believe she plays for the LA Astro now, so she's absolutely insane. But now that Occidental doesn't have her, they managed to unseat the Claremont Green Shirts for the bid, but I'm not sure if Occidental or Union is really going to be as strong as they have been in the past. So maybe that's the pool of life. I don't know.
Scotti, can I point out something with that Pool B with Whitman? I think it's important to note that by the algorithm, Whitman should actually be the 5 seed, but something that Deep Look listeners might not realize is that D3 has a caveat in the seeding for nationals where there's no regional rematches in pool play. And so the only way to avoid having it would have been 4-5 Portland Whitman, so that had to be avoided. But then in order to avoid creating a New England rematch in pool play as well, Whitman had to fall all the way to the 7 seed. So they are like the 7 seed this weekend, but in terms of the algorithm, they're the 5 seed. And so that's like one of those unfortunate consequences of what I think is actually a really good rule for D3, given that it's 16 instead of 20 teams, so you only get 3 pool play games. You don't want one of those to be a regional rematch. I think the rule is good, but this is one of those like unfortunate consequences where I think Whitman is drastically underseeded, and so they're definitely a team that I'm excited to watch in the women's division. And I think that Wellesley Whitman game is like a semis quality game that we're getting in pool play and should be really exciting.
Yeah,
I like a lot of these matchups here, especially these 1-2s in the women's division. Scotti, is there a game on the schedule that you're like this is the one to circle in pool play?
In pool play, I mean, we already said Wellesley Whitman, and I think also potentially Portland Mount Holyoke. I mean, that's 4-5. So those teams, from what I know, they play very differently. So it'll be interesting to see how they match up, and also how Portland's rebuilt from their really, really senior heavy roster last year.
Yeah, I know for me, I'm very curious about a Colorado College team that we haven't really talked a lot about. So they're obviously going to get tested in pool play. But we have them playing against Carleton on the stream in the morning. So that'll be a test, but I'm very curious to see how they'll handle Williams, who, Carleton's been so good this year. It's not a big deal to not show up exactly in your first D3 Nationals game. You go up against Carleton, although this is a program that's been to D1 Nationals. Some of these players have been to D1 Nationals. That's a team that I'm very intrigued by. Mike, what about on your side? What's the pool play matchup to see? What are the highlights?
Yeah, I'm gonna cheat a little bit and pick the trio in Pool D of Whitman, Richmond, and Missouri S&T, just because I think stylistically all 3 teams are super unique. Whitman plays this really like highlight heavy, loves the deep shot, throws their bodies around kind of style. Richmond is like super well drilled and like has a very strong system. Like when you watch them play, like if you watch them enough, you can kind of start to guess where the cuts are going, just because you can see how well coached and how well drilled they are. And then Missouri S&T plays a lot of zone. They have a lot of height and athleticism. And so their zone is going to kind of like switch things up a lot against their opposition. And so I'm a big believer in styles make fights and make things interesting. And I think that we're very lucky that 4-5-9, not only is it, a styles make fights level of interesting, but it's also three really high quality teams. And so while I just, gave a bit before about how there's no pressure on those three teams in terms of making it through to the next day, I do think in terms of like establishing seeding and order within that, the matchups in that pool are going to be super fascinating to watch.
All right, let's get into a couple players to watch, and then we'll hit the picks for everybody. Mike, we can start with you because I know you mentioned Will Brandt could be one of the top players. You mentioned a couple different players, but who's really at the tippy top, or do you think is breaking out potentially this year and deserves to be highlighted and is a player to watch for you for new fans?
Yeah, so I mean, like I think the ones that are obvious to cover, right? So Lincoln Grench and Oliver Kraft from Colorado College, Will Brandt from St. Olaf, Middlebury. I shouted out several of their players earlier, and I think someone that was our breakout player of the year last year that has solidified himself since last year's Nationals, made the U24 mixed team, has kind of led Grinnell back to Nationals, is Jacob Cohen, and he's someone that I really hope we're able to feature on stream at some point because this is high praise, but I've described him to people as D3 Jack Williams, just in terms of how he plays. He's this really smooth 6'4". This term gets thrown around a lot, but he is truly a hybrid for this team. He'll funnel back behind the disc or start off downfield and does a lot of work downfield. Just a lot of fun to watch and is really smooth. I think that a team that's going to have somebody break out, and they have a lot of potential players that I think can do this, is Lewis and Clark Bacchus. They are a very young team and also a very exciting team. And they have a handful of players that I think are in contention to have a big breakout Nationals. Their their Donovan nominee, Owen Hay is a lot of fun to watch. Leo Farley and Leo Finley, the two Leos, they're both going to be very interesting to watch. And they have a handful of others as well that are capable of making really big plays. I think that's a team that I actually have very high predictions for, which we'll cover here in a little bit. And I think it's going to be interesting to see which one of their players uses this big stage to break out and make a name for themselves.
I recognize a couple of these Lewis and Clark names, I think, from high school national invite rosters. So
they have a large contingent from Minnesota. There's this weird pipeline coming from Minnesota to Lewis and Clark right now. And they have a lot of experience together. Several former Edina players playing on Lewis and Clark. So people might recognize some of these names.
All right. Shout out for Colin Hill at Barry. I think he's probably become a known name at this point, but I think Colin's someone I'm glad they'll make it.
Colin's well known, and Colin's been an excellent leader for Barry this year. We have a piece coming out. Zach Davis did an interview with him about Barry's season. It's pretty cool. Interviewed him at the start of the year, and again since they made Nationals. So he's been a great leader for that Barry team. I don't see Barry doing well enough for us to see too much of Colin, but he definitely deserves a shout out for the job he's done with that team this year.
All right, Scotti, what about on your end? There's Claire. Babbitt, Bryant, I don't know this name, but who should we be watching out for in the women's side?
Well, I mean, everyone knows Claire Babbitt Bryant if you pay any attention to D3 women's ultimate at all. She is the 2-time Pody winner. Going for a 3-peat, lefty, handler, O-line, D-line, layouts, everything goes deep. She's incredible. And really young as well. A lot of future in the division, which is really awesome to see. As well as Kezia Wild, I believe is how her name is pronounced. She's really kind of who fuels or is the motor behind that Middlebury O-line. And threw, I think, the most assists, at least in 2021 in that Winter Nationals that I was at. But moving on from Middlebury, watching Wellesley play, Tess Dolan is... her nickname's Rue. She's definitely the top player on Wellesley, but I believe her name is Leah Black is again she's the motor behind the Wellesley O-line. She's really tall, and just a really solid player. That I don't think Middlebury would be the team that they are without her. Or not Middlebury, Wellesley would be the team that they are without her. Moving down the line, Carleton has Harper Brooks Kahn is coming back, as well as Tess Barton. Both of these players were just really solid players at Nationals, 3 years that we've been back since the pandemic. And, just from talking to Carleton, I know that they have a really heavy emphasis on being a team and not so much like star players. So I'm really, interested to see who pops up for them to be, the next impact player. And then if we're gonna go as far down as like the 4 or 5 seeds, Julia Hanley was really like impressive in the final in 2021. So she definitely stepped up in that game. And as far as, the trajectory of Portland Ultimate, with most of their main core players graduating, it definitely has opened up room for her and McKaylee Kruger. And then finally, Mount Holyoke, we talked a lot about Gigi Downey, their Mount Holyoke's Donovan nominee, as well as Tess Dolan is Wellesley's Donovan nominee. And then Williams is Lauren Lynch, who I spoke to for my interview. She's their Donovan nominee. So there aren't a lot of videos yet for the Donovan for D3 Ultimate, but the ones that are there, you should check them out.
I think Downey might be the only person who could, maybe Wildy could take it from CVB, take the pody. I don't know, but that would be a tough case, especially because Carleton, I think, spreads it out a lot from what I've seen.
They really do.
Emily Mulhern from St. Olaf, another player who I think could cause a lot of problems, especially if her throwing game is enhanced. Mary Andrews from Colorado College is the last person I'd want to be assigned to guard. Just seems like she's going to run forever. So I imagine we're going to get a lot high on the stat sheet. Then you're going to see her near the top of the leaderboards. So those are players that I would highlight in the women's division. But now it is time to get down to the picks. All right, we're going to do our semis, our finals, and our winners here, so we can nail down the picks. And I'll get some picks from Charlie later. They'll assuredly be bad, but or chalky. Look, he's not here to defend himself, so we can take all the shots we want.
That's right.
Scotti, do you want to start us off with your semis picks in the women's division?
All right, semis picks. Let's see. How is this bracket going to shape out anyway? So, Pool B and C are coming together, and then A and D are coming together. So we're definitely going to see Middlebury. I don't unless something insane happens. I feel like almost like 100% chance that they'll be there, as well as Wellesley. Wellesley's really solid. They really play like a program. But we'll see if there can be an upset. I think that Carleton could make it. Or it will probably be in the semis as well. But I'd be interested to see if, Portland or Mount Holyoke or Colorado College upsets, or Mount Holyoke, Colorado College upsets a Carleton or Portland. So let me see. I think I'm going to go Mount Holyoke. So we'll do our top 3 seeds and then Mount Holyoke for that 4th spot in the semis.
Interesting. I'm like, I look at these semifinalists. It's like, oh my gosh, it feels like just teams we've seen so many times before, and that makes it kind of hard for me to spot an upset that I really like. Even though I would love to pick one, I really may have to go chalk here. I see the case for Holyoke. I like Whitman, and even though I've been hyping Colorado College, I don't know if I can hype them over Carleton. I think Carleton looks really, really good. So unless I can convince myself that Whitman's going to take Wellesley, which I don't think I can do, I think I might just have to go chalk here. Sadly,
it's foolish to go chalk in
really is
in D3 women's.
I mean, look at where we're at though. It's crazy that we have basically the same teams as the top 4 seeds. Like that to me is like the outlier that tells you like maybe it's time to be chalky.
Yeah.
So the Frisco Nationals that we had, the Winter Nationals were complete chalk. It was 1v4, 2v3. We had a 9 seed make it last year, y'all, in the women's division. And then if you go back to 2019 in the women's division, we had a 14 seed. The seeds for semis were 1, 14, 6, and 9.
Let's go Lehigh. I was on that team in 2018.
So you got to pick an upset then. If you've run in the upsets, you got to pick them too, right?
Do you think I saw the field at all? I was a rookie that year.
All I'm saying is it would be shocking to me if we saw chalk. I get it and I understand, but the women's division always throws a wrench at us somewhere.
Oh man, Colorado College could be that wrench. I'm looking at their path right now. If they were to finish second in Pool C, what would that open up for them? They would have to go against. Okay, well maybe I could talk myself into this then. They get Portland. If you're dodging Carleton and Middlebury, then that's the key to me. I think Wellesley's good. I think Portland is like can contend with those teams, but I think they're the most fallible of the top 3 seeds.
Yeah, I agree.
So maybe Mike's convincing me. I'm okay. I'm going to put my money where my mouth is. Then I'm going to take Colorado College to 10 seed, make semis in their first D3 nationals.
Love it.
All right. So who do you got moving on to the finals, Scotty? I think you have Middlebury, Wellesley, Carleton, and Holyoke in your semis.
Yeah, so we'll have Middlebury facing Mount Holyoke and Wellesley facing Carleton. So Wellesley beat Carleton in the semis last year. So that could be a fun rematch. And, will it be a grudge match in our hypothetical universe for Carleton and Wellesley? Time will tell. And since I'm over here, rooting for a Carleton Eclipse championship, I'm gonna send Carleton to the finals to finally match up with Middlebury. There's no way that that Mount Holyoke can beat Middlebury. They should have lost to them at regionals. I don't know if they faced them because now I can't find the USAU's score reporter is so bad, but finding those records is just going to take me more time than it's really worth. I think I'll see Middlebury Carleton, and then I'm gonna hold down the fort and say that Carleton's going to take the three-peat from Middlebury.
All right, I'm also going to have Middlebury Carleton. I think these teams are like borderline D1 nationals level teams. Like these are teams that could go to D1 regionals and compete for spots. I think they're both really good, but Middlebury's just stacked. I mean, it's wild to me that so many of the core contributors from a team that won a title 2 years ago are still a part of this team, including its stars. So I'm going to take Middlebury and the championship experience and the acumen. So I've got Middlebury over Carleton in the final. Matchup of destiny. So assuredly we won't see. I mean, who saw Wellesley coming? Nobody saw Wellesley coming. I'm sure they love to be overlooked right now.
Keith, I have to stir up a little something here of just being like the little sibling, the younger sibling of being D3. Carleton Eclipse. If you put them in the North Central D1, where do they finish in North Central D1 for women's? Are they second behind fourth? The other Carleton team?
Yeah, third or fourth probably. I think Minnesota and Carleton I think are definitely a step up. But okay. After that, nobody in that region was particularly consistent, and I think finishing third is very achievable for them.
Okay. All right. Fair enough.
Okay.
And if they played Minnesota 10 times, Minnesota's not winning all 10 of those times.
Right. That's kind of what I was getting at. I think they probably win, or Carleton wins 3 of those 10, maybe?
Yeah, I could vibe with that. With that.
All right.
You're up now, Mike. Who do you got going to semis in the men's division?
Okay. So I have I went through and went each pool, who I think finishes where, and filled through the bracket and everything. So I could walk through my entire tournament if I really wanted to, but we'll stick just to semis. So I think Colorado College has a pretty straightforward path, and can't see them not making it there. I have them playing against Middlebury in semis because I have Middlebury finishing second in their pool and having to go through the pre-quarter route. I have on the other side the winner from Pool C. I think Lewis and Clark takes the other semifinal spot. And then lastly, I have Richmond taking the other semifinal spot after finishing third in Pool D. I think that there's going to be some weirdness in that Pool D, but I think that weirdness then actually ends up giving Richmond a decent path to semifinals. and I have them still making it despite finishing third in their pool.
Okay. All right. So you've got Colorado College versus Middlebury, and then who do you have playing Richmond?
I have Lewis and Clark against Richmond.
Let's see. Okay. All right. I'm also going to take Colorado College. I think that's like you said, a lot of that's as much about path as it is about the team itself. I like some 3 seeds to do well in the pools. I think if I had to project my pool winners right now, I'm going Colorado College, Navy, Middlebury, and S&T as my pool winners. So we're gonna get a little wild out here. I think that's gonna line me up for Colorado College and Lewis and Clark in semis. I think knocking out S&T, if I have that right. And so that gives me on the other side Navy and Middlebury. Do I think that Navy can get knocked off? Man, can I take 3 teams out of Pool D?
It's a fair thing to do. I have all 3 making it to quarters for what it's worth.
How good is Kenyon? What's Kenyon got to offer?
All right, so here's the thing about Kenyon. And Kenyon, I'm sorry because they tried to get me to do a voiceover for their Donovan video, but I try and remain agnostic in all Donovan videos. But now I'm giving them an organic one. So if they go back and redo their video, so fair play. Kenyon has this incredible swagger about them, and it's led by Owen Heavley, who's their Donovan nominee. And I wrote about him in the FCS recap. He's one of those players that when you watch him on the field, everything he does looks cool. There's people who's their throwing form just looks really cool. They kind of bounce a little bit when they run and kind of swagger around the field. Everything he does looks really cool. And they have won a ton of games this year, all really close games. Their point diff at FCS, they went 6-1 and had a plus 10 point diff or something like that. They were just winning close games right and left. And so they are one of those teams that's going to kind of hang around every game. I think that's going to catch up to them at some point in terms of trying to win out. I have them losing in pre-quarters. But they are a team that's going to hang with whoever they play against. They're not going to be out of any game. I think they'll make Colorado College work. I think that'll be a 15-12 type game. But I think them getting matched up against Pool D is pretty tough with the quality in that pool.
All right, not convincing to me. I'm going with my 4 pool winners then. Colorado College versus Lewis and Clark and Navy versus Middlebury. In going on to the final, I'm taking the upset, Lewis and Clark over Colorado College. So I've got LNC and Middlebury in my final. I don't know if Navy's an 11 seed. I think they're underseeded, but if they were a 6 or 7 seed, you wouldn't bat a lash. But I don't know if that's enough to make me feel like they're a final contender. What do you got, Mike, in the final?
Yeah, so my semifinals are rematches of games we've seen already with Colorado College and Middlebury, and then Lewis and Clark and Richmond. I think Middlebury gets revenge and pulls off the upset in the revenge game against Colorado College. And I think that Richmond beats Lewis and Clark. I think Richmond's discipline will win out in that game, but they played a double game point thriller at FCS, and I expect another exciting game between those 2 teams. So that gives me a final of Middlebury against Richmond. Middlebury gets revenge again against Richmond, who beat them at FCS, and Middlebury comes out on top this time. I've got Middlebury beating Richmond in the final.
Yeah, it's always funny to talk about, Middlebury versus any team that's described as disciplined, because their whole strategy is just chaos. So I don't know. I do think that in this, especially in D3, chaos always reigns supreme.
The pranksters, I mean, they're in the right place, I don't want to pick the same title winner, but
a low-key fun thing to watch. A low-key fun thing to watch in any Middlebury versus Richmond game, will be the sidelines. So Richmond has an absurdly large roster. It's 43 players, and all 43 stay engaged and involved. Their sideline swings games. They are raucous and crazy and cheering and involved. And Middlebury, of course, is known for a lot of their goofy sideline cheers. I jokingly wrote in one of our pieces that I can't wait to see how they like push the lines with USAU again this year, because they always find some sort of cheer that someone has to ask them to not do on a stream. So like, that game, if we get that game, the sideline energy is like gonna actually be part of the battle and like something that, you know, plays a role in the game. It's gonna be fun.
Hey, that's content. Get me down there. I'll get some content for the Ulti World, the Gram, you know?
We might not get you back if we put you on the sideline of that game. Like I would worry about your safety. It would put a helmet on you while we put you down there.
Put me on like a bungee cord so you can reel me
so we can reel you back in.
There we go. Perfect plan. All right, so I'm looking at, because you're making me think. I'm like going into the details here, because so the men's final is the second final and the women's final is first, because the Middlebury would benefit from having the team from the women's division on their sideline. So if Middlebury wins the title, they're going to be there cheering for the men's division team. Adding extra. Look, now I'm in a Middlebury sweep. I got Middlebury winning both divisions. If you don't know what to do at D3, just pick Middlebury. I'm pretty sure that's the way it goes. That
is a decent strategy. That is a decent strategy. Now I'm looking at my semifinal with Colorado College and Middlebury and thinking about the fact that both of their women's division counterparts are at the tournament as well. And so like the excitement around some of those games could be really cool. And Scotti rattled off like how many teams have both of their teams there this weekend. So, and with the new 3-day schedule, it opens up a lot of opportunity for like sideline involvement and staggering of rounds. So that's going to be really cool. Looking forward to that.
Yeah, it'll be exciting.
All right, the picks are in. You are not beholden to these picks for your picks for the game, but your reputation is on the line. The hashtag the game is out. So certainly by the time you listen to this, we'll be starting up the engines for the entries. So make sure to get your picks in. Maybe Mike and I'll talk a little bit more about the game in a subscriber bonus segment or something like that. But I appreciate Scotti and Mike, both of you, for joining us and sharing your knowledge. And we're looking forward to seeing much more of you and hearing a lot more of your voices over these next few days. It's D3's time to shine. It's the D3 takeover for this.
This is our Super Bowl, Keith. This is our Super Bowl.
I implore the Deep Look audience to tune in this weekend across both divisions. There is seriously so much talent in the field this year across both divisions, both team-wide talent and superstar talent. There are names that are going to be playing this weekend that you'll be seeing in the club division for years to come. There's names that are going to be on your USA rosters for years to come. I implore you to tune in this weekend. It is going to be a lot of fun, and you are sure to see some exciting Ultimate. Please tune in.
The quality's gotten better every year, and there's so many storylines this year. I mean, even when you talk about like in the men's division, the biggest storyline is the team that's not there. I mean, this is like UNC not qualifying for nationals. Like it's nuts that OC didn't even make it out of a 3-bid region. And then the women's division, you have like these repeat rivalries of these programs that have been so strong, including a back-to-back title winner who's like got some teams hot on their tail in like Wellesley and Carleton. So like these are great stories, and I definitely look forward to seeing how they play out. And I think anybody who's along for the ride will enjoy them as well. But we definitely appreciate both of you coming on the show, and we're going to talk more D3 when we are back here. Don't go anywhere. You're listening to Deep Look. You take the field with basically two things, yourself and your cleats. That's why you need the best on your feet. For me, I want something light, but something durable and supportive. I used to, when I was in college, I would like buy a nice pair of cleats that I would only play for tournaments. And then I would buy a really low cost basic cleats that I would wear at practices, because I bust through cleats quickly. So I need something that's going to last, especially if I'm going to spend some money on it and want it to be my top performance cleat. I need something that's going to be durable. Tokai cleats are specifically designed for Ultimate. The toe stud helps you get in and out of your cuts quickly. You can't get that on a soccer cleat, and you won't find much ankle support in soccer cleats either, or a fabric-based upper that helps cool off your feet, which is especially great for the long days on the turf, which we know can get brutal. That's why they're the official cleat of the U.S. national team. You try to put your best self on the field, so make sure you're bringing the best with you at tokaiultimate.com. That's tokai-ultimate.com.
Welcome back to Deep Look. Keith, thanks for holding it down without me. Great to hear from Mike and Scotti, and get ready for a really exciting D3 championships. I don't think people realize just how good the top D3 teams are at this point. Like, they're ranked in the top 40. In the case of the women's division, Middlebury could be a D1 nationals team, Keith.
Yeah, and I do think Middlebury is like basically a borderline D1 nationals team. They've played well against competition at that level. And Carleton and Wellesley are probably not far behind. Like, I think that they could contend for spots.
Wellesley's only loss is 5-4 to SUNY Binghamton, the Metro East qualifier, who beat Yale, who's a legit team. So that's a pretty nice little resume when that's your only loss.
Yeah, and the quality of play has gone up every year. The best players in the division are better and better every year. So I think that we're definitely in for an exciting tournament. You know, the women's division, I think it feels a little bit top heavy, but that just means you get tremendous matchups when you get down to into the late stages of the tournament. The men's field feels wide open. I mean, I Colorado College is your favorite, but it's like Mike talked about this a little bit. But you know, how do you figure out who that next team is? You know, we both ended up picking Middlebury for our pick, but we have different teams in the finals, and we don't have a lot of crossover in our semifinalists outside of that. So I think it feels like an open field in the men's side as well. And certainly the history of D3 is that, you know, with limited data to provide both for, you know, your postulations, but also for your algorithm, the seeding is often not not the best way to pick by. You're going to get surprises because it's both that and just like the nature of this college game. You know, there's just not a ton of consistency, so you're going to get surprises here and there along the way.
Well, I'm ready to make my picks. I know you all already made yours. So, Keith, can I just jump in there and give you my thoughts on my picks?
Yeah. Where do you want to start?
All right. Well, I've got the men's bracket pulled up here, so why don't we start there? So, am I picking the 4 semis teams as well as the finalists and the winner? Okay.
That's right.
Okay, got it. As I'm sure everybody understands at this point, with Luke Blears out for St. Olaf, it's hard to see them making much of a run. I just, you know, the results this season have been pretty shaky. It's kind of surprising that they ended up getting the 2 seed overall. So I am not going to be taking them to make semis, I think. So I'm taking Colorado College. I'm taking Middlebury. I'm taking Richmond. Who's my 4th team? I think I'm going to go pretty chalky here, Keith. And I'm going to say Whitman. So those are my 4 semis teams. I've got it going Colorado College versus Middlebury in the final. And I think that this South Central region has just been so strong this whole year. I'm rolling with Colorado College all the way through this whole thing. I think they're very fortunate that Oklahoma Christian is not here. And the path has set up extremely well for Colorado College to take down a title in D3 didn't they win? They won back in the day, right? Like maybe like the first year of D3. Once upon a time, Colorado College was like an elite level D1 team.
Let's see. So you ended up with 3 teams from Pool D making it: Whitman, Richmond. No, sorry, you don't. Just two. Whitman and Richmond.
Yep.
Okay. All right, and then so you got Colorado College against Middlebury, and then Colorado College in the win. So you differentiate from. But
actually,
Mike
now I'm wondering. Hang on a second. I don't know that what I just described is possible. No, yes, it is. It is. Because Richmond, I have Richmond winning Pool D, Whitman finishing in 2nd. I have Whitman losing to Middlebury in quarters. And I have Richmond losing to Colorado College in quarters. We're good.
That's right.
Yep.
And so you got Colorado College winning. Neither Mike nor I picked Colorado College to make it to the final. We both had them losing in semifinals, but we had Middlebury winning. So everybody's got Middlebury in the finals.
Hang on. I said I was wrong, and then I said I was right, but I actually think that I'm wrong. Because I don't believe it is possible for the second place finisher from Pool D to make semis unless they beat 1C, which is going to be Middlebury. So what I described is not possible. I have to pick somebody to come from the 2A, 3D, 1B side of things.
Well,
I'm
so I guess
fading
it's
St.
possible
Olaf.
if you have Richmond or Whitman finish third in Pool D,
which is not out of the question.
It's totally not. In fact, I could imagine a 3-way 2-1 split between them and
very
and
possible.
S&T and Women.
Jeez. I actually I feel like being 3D is an advantage almost. Like you either want to win the pool or you want to, I don't know. Honestly, the best path to a title might be being the 3 seed out of Pool D. Because if you're the 1 seed, you're going to play presumably Colorado College in semis. If you're the 2 seed, you're going to play Middlebury in quarters. And if you're the 3 seed, you're playing whoever won Pool B in quarters. And you can't feel that scared about that. That's kind of crazy.
I don't know.
Well, look, I'm going to stand by what I said. I'm going to stay with my picks, Keith. Even though that's not exactly how I had envisioned it playing out. There's going to be a tankathon in Pool D. Think about that.
That is a tough tightrope to walk, I think.
Very tough.
I do wonder if we're all writing off St. Olaf, who may have the best player in the division still. If we're writing them off too much. None of us even have them make it semis, but I guess we'll find out.
I guess we will.
Women's division.
Women's division. All right. So let me get the easy ones out of the way. Semis. Middlebury, Wellesley, Carleton College, Eclipse. Easy call. Question is, who do I think is going to get out of Pool D in that one spot? I'm going to ride with the Northeast. I'm going with New England. I'm going to take Mount Holyoke to upset Portland and get into the semis as well. Unfortunately for them, they have to play Middlebury in semis, and that's going to be an L. I'm taking Middlebury through to the finals yet again. And this Wellesley-Carleton matchup, the likely matchup, I would say, in semis is going to be fantastic. Both these teams, they're ranked 22 and 24, I think, in the power rankings. Wellesley at 22, in the frisbeerankings.com, I should say. I mean, like they are extremely good teams. I'm gonna say New England. Steel iron sharpens iron, Keith, and I'm gonna say that Wellesley gets past this Carleton team to make it an all New England final. And I'm going to go ahead and say that Middlebury repeats. Claire Babbitt-Bryan and company, three-peats, are going to continue their incredible run and get yet another title. I just don't see anybody coming close to them. And, you look at what happened in regionals. Wellesley loses 13-7 to Middlebury. It's just that this team is so far out in front of everybody. I mean, I don't know how you don't pick Middlebury to win this tournament.
Scotti picked Carleton. Scotti picked Carleton getting the upset. Although she was pretty openly like, part of me just wants to see the upset. So
that would be crazy.
I guess it's possible.
Of course, it's possible.
All of us are fading Portland. Nobody has Portland making semis. But we have the big three in there, and then you and Scotti both picked Holyoke. I have the 10 seed Colorado College making the run. You got to have some chaos in D3. And then we all have you have Wellesley beating Carleton, but otherwise everything else is the same.
There you go. Well, I'm very excited for the tournament. Looking forward to it. You'll be able to follow along with all of our coverage. We've got live streaming coverage from two games every round. Throughout the tournament, we'll be bringing you the coverage of all 4 semifinals, as well as, of course, the finals. And we encourage you to head over to ultiworld.com/subscribe to follow everything. It's the most coverage D3 Nationals will have ever had. So we're super excited to continue to expand the content offerings there. And please tune in and enjoy. Now, before we go today, we have an extra special little bonus at the end of the show here. Keith, it's Money Mellon's time.
Yeah. The hype is real.
Carnegie Mellon will be joining us next. We'll be hearing from Sarah Liang and Rosa Vitiello. members of this Carnegie Mellon team that upset Pitt to win the Great Lakes and get into nationals. They will be the dead last seed at nationals, and it is going to be a lot of fun to root for this Money Melons team. I've already seen people talking about how excited they are to follow this team. So we'll talk to Sarah and Rosa next, right here on Deep Look. Joining us now on Deep Look are two members of the Carnegie Mellon Money Melons team that just defeated Pittsburgh in the finals of the OV Regional to qualify for the national championships. And Sarah Liang and Rosa Vitiello join us right now on Deep Look. Congratulations to you both, and thanks for being here.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
Yeah.
So I asked you this before, and then I decided I would just ask you on the air. To your knowledge, is this the first time that Carnegie Mellon has made nationals? Because I certainly don't remember it any time in the last 10 years or so. But I don't have the history books fully opened, and so maybe you know.
Yeah, so we also did not know everything about the history of CMU Ultimate, but we've learned a lot in the past couple of weeks. So this is the first time that the Money Melons have made nationals. I think the first CMU Women's Ultimate team was formed in like the late 80s, and that team made nationals a couple of years, I believe, like late 80s, early 90s. Then that team dissolved, and I think in the early 2000s, CMU had a team that was joint with Pitt and Duquesne, two other colleges in the Pittsburgh area. Then that sort of combined team also dissolved, and then the Money Melons were formed later on. And so I think this year is the first year that the Money Melons have made nationals, but like the old CMU women's program had made nationals before.
Now, how is all this history coming up, Sarah? I mean, are y'all getting like inundated with calls or emails or social media posts from players from CMU teams past? Like what's going on for the team as a reaction to qualifying for the college championships?
Yeah, we've been getting tons and tons of messages from like alumni just congratulating us on nationals. And through that, they've sort of been like giving us little tidbits of history. Like I learned that the last time CMU beat Pitt was sectionals 2013. I had no idea that was the last time. And then, yeah, we learned about the history of like this old CMU team that didn't go by the Money Melons from like the early 90s. So yeah, it's definitely been great connecting with more of our alumni in the past couple of weeks as well. They're super excited for us. And they've been wonderful in like fundraising and getting us super excited for nationals.
Rosa, you all come out on Saturday at regionals and lose 2 games. So you're going into Sunday with a couple of L's on the ledger. What happened Saturday night that led to you coming out and going, making the run through the bracket to get into nationals?
Yeah, I mean, we've been talking a lot about this. When you look at our record Saturday, 2-2, it's kind of maybe surprising on Sunday that, we make this run. But when you look closer at those games, actually, those 2 games that we lost on Saturday were really hard-fought games on a universe point loss, which may be a coin flip at some point when you get to universe point. And the Money Melons played really well. I think we came out of Saturday just feeling really good about how we played. Some really hard D, some really great O. And then just kind of riding that feeling into Sunday. And I actually texted a few people being like, you should maybe tune in tomorrow. We have a run in the bracket. Cause I was feeling good, and I think having that experience of those hard fought games on Saturday, then kind of attune the Melons to have a hard fought game in the finals, right? That we knew it was going to be hard, that we were going to put up a good fight. But people needed to have that kind of extra energy in them, and having that experience on Saturday and continuing through that into Sunday, I think was really important.
I like that you kept the receipts. You might want to post those. Just put those out on social media. Look, I knew We were going to make a run. You got to take your victory laps when you get them. Trust me. Somebody puts my opinion out there a lot. You got to take your victory laps when you get a chance. I mean, how much was nationals a part of the consideration for the team coming in? I mean, it's not like, obviously your season had gotten a little bit shortened. You didn't get to play in that many tournaments prior to this, but it wasn't like, the results were so outstanding that it was like, wow, the team is really like playing its best. Hey, we're one of the elite teams in the country or something like that. I don't think if you look at just on paper, that's the impression you would walk away with. Sarah, you can answer first, and Rosa, you can add on if you have anything. But was nationals a big part of what the team was thinking about going into your regionals?
Yeah, we had a bit of an interesting season this year where in the fall, every single fall, CMU plays Pitt in a series of showcase games in Pittsburgh. So Danger plays us and Mr. Yuck plays in Sabanur. And this past fall, we beat Danger in the showcase game. And I think that sort of got a lot of our players sort of thinking, like maybe this could be like a bigger year for us. But at the same time, like the Money Melons have always been built on like a sort of, I guess, philosophy of like developing players and sort of being like development first. Because we, like, the vast majority of our players that come in have absolutely no ultimate experience. And so going into the spring, we were thinking a lot about how do we balance, making sure that we develop all of these freshmen and make sure that like our program has a strong foundation for years to come, and balance that with trying to be competitive as well and like seeing how far we can go. And so as it turns out, we only really started having practices with our roster for the series maybe like a week or two before sectionals. We didn't really have a lot of time with this roster. And so going into sectionals, I think we were really focused on growth and building up like our team, our systems, our chemistry. And I think coming out of sectionals, we felt super good. I think beat every team at sectionals except for Pitt. We had a really great weekend, and we really thought that we had like a strong foundation upon which to go into regionals. And so I think going into regionals, we weren't necessarily like making it a goal to, go to nationals, but we were really excited to see like just how far or like just what this team's potential was.
Tell us about the... Oh, no, go ahead. Go ahead, Rosa.
Similar points to Sarah, really. I think even we had a goals meeting like right before sectionals about what we wanted the series to look like. And I don't think nationals really came up as a discussion. It was kind of just, what are our goals on growth? And it definitely is interesting to approach a season more on that like process of growth than say this more like larger goal of making nationals. But I think it worked out really well for the Melons in the end, right? So.
I think so. Tell us about the Pitt game itself. Who stepped up? Who carried the team to the win?
Sarah? Sarah had a great game. Sarah and I both played all the points that game, but we had also just a really fantastic other set of people who stepped up. Name a few, like Bella Krisky, one of our captains, had some crazy Ds in the air, was putting herself on a really hard matchup against Lest, as well as, Vic Chen, Red, who else? So many people. Karen Lee was a main handler on the D line that I think really pulled through. And we really needed all of those players. It really wasn't just me and Sarah. And so, seeing that happen was really incredibly exciting, that people were really pushing really hard in this game, especially for all of the kind of graduating folks who aren't coming back, like potentially our last game. And so everyone was really finding those extra gears.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that aside from me and Rosa playing every point, lines otherwise were called pretty evenly. Like every single player on our roster got like valuable and important playtime. And this is like a roster that has like at least 5 or 6 like rookies that, you know, started in the fall having never touched a disc before. So it was really incredible to see like everyone's improvement, like over the course of regionals, over the course of the season. Like I would say that every single person stepped up super big in that last game against Pitt. And it was just incredible to watch and be a part of.
Rosa, Sarah talked a little bit about, and you both really talked a bit about the growth mindset and having, you know, the some of the younger players on the team who are playing in this final. But obviously, you know, Pitt's a well-established program who I'm sure you all are very familiar with. I didn't know, someone was telling us that, you know, CMU and Pittsburgh are like literally like basically go into each other. Like the schools are so close together. I didn't know that it was like teams would practice on each other's campuses and stuff like that. So I'm sure you're very familiar with them, and that can be intimidating for younger players or less experienced players or even some experienced players. How did you find a way to set the stakes for players without them feeling overwhelmed, Rosa?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's kind of just we've played Pitt before. We've won against Pitt before in the fall. We've played really hard games against teams that were seated above us in regionals and won. And so the ceiling is very high for us. You know, it doesn't stop at Pitt. And so I think going in with that mindset and kind of, especially that first break in that game, it's like, we're here, we're playing, we got a break on Pitt in the first point, and this is going to be a good game. I think really kind of gave those players hopefully some perspective. I also think we benefited a little bit from maybe the inexperience of not having played a game to go. There wasn't as much nerves, I think, 'cause even like the stakes weren't as known, I guess. I think somewhere along the lines, like we were up and a rookie player asked, like, what happens if we win this game? And we're like, okay, maybe we discuss that later.
Wow.
But I think people were just playing to, you know, have fun and compete. And having that focus in the game was really important for those nerves, I think.
So you're going to nationals. We don't know the seeds yet, but you're probably going to be the bottom seed. That's all but guaranteed. How do you prepare for nationals now? Like it wasn't an anticipated part of your season. So is this just like go and have fun and, you know, enjoy the opportunity? It's not particularly far for you to get there. But do you have more competitive aspirations now that you're in this position?
Yeah, I mean, in terms of preparation for nationals, yeah, we currently do not have a vast majority of our team in Pittsburgh. People had plans to leave the city. And so we're going to have people flying in like next week, try and get a few practices in, and then drive off to Cincinnati. But yeah, in terms of like our goals heading into nationals, I don't think anyone on the team thinks of this as just like, you know, going there to have fun and just, you know, sit back and just see how we do. I think that like we feel like we have a very good shot against a lot of these teams, and we're really excited to see just how competitive we can be. I think that like our run through sectionals and regionals has shown that like, you know, we have beaten lots of teams that have been seeded higher than us and teams that people thought that we didn't really have a chance at. So I think the team is really excited to see all of these new opponents and how we stack up against them.
You both have a good amount of experience playing against top level players in club and in semi-pro. Is there anybody or any teams that you're really hoping to get to see at nationals? Is there anybody maybe you're hoping to see in your pool, or maybe somebody you think you might have a good matchup against? Rosa, you can start, and Sarah, if you have anything to add, you can.
Yeah, I mean, so prior to playing on the Mellons in my undergrad, I played on Tufts EWO. So I'm excited to see them. Unclear whether I'm excited to play them. Tufts EWO are definitely a fierce competitor, well-coached, physical, competitive. But And I think the like seeding predictions said that we might be in the same pool. So I'd be looking forward to that game. I think, maybe have some inner conflict. But yeah, that's my, I think, top team to play, I think.
Yeah, I don't know if I've really thought about like a team that I would particularly want to face. I think that it's really exciting to have this opportunity to go to nationals and play these teams that, you know, I've watched a lot of their streamed games from the regular season. And I think I'm particularly excited for all of our players who haven't, played a lot of teams out of region to, be able to get this opportunity to play against a bunch of different play styles and teams that we don't see very often, because given that we mostly travel regionally during the regular season, we really see like the same teams from like the Ohio Valley, from the Atlantic Coast, from like the Great Lakes. And so getting the opportunity to play teams out of region, I think is going to be like super exciting for our entire team, and especially for our players who have never really played Ultimate outside of CMU College.
Are there any hype Money Melons cheers or celebrations that we need to know about? I have been speculating a lot on this podcast.
We have a money melon, honey money melons, and the is guttural. That's like the big one that we do. And so, I don't know, Sarah, do you know any others? And we listened to the podcast when you were mentioning it, and we're like, oh, we gotta make some cheers to live up to the hype.
Yeah, I think we've currently got some people, postulating and trying to come up with some new ones for nationals. I know Rosa had proposed getting a watermelon, and
yes, gotta do it.
Yeah. We were like, are we able to throw it? Because Sarah and I are on Parcha, and chairs were banned, but so watermelons are probably also banned. But we were discussing.
They're not banned yet.
Yeah, I mean, don't tell you.
Is there a way to like not hard boil, but like make a watermelon like a little more strong so you can throw it and it like bounce back? Like, can you rubberize it or
hard
something?
Boil.
Yeah.
I think I was wondering like which melon is the appropriate melon emoji to put next to the money bag, because I'm gonna be spamming it if y'all come out here and get some wins. I'm just gonna be spamming money melons emojis everywhere.
Yeah, so it's always been the watermelon for the money melons. When we've had a B team, they've been called the honeydews. So yeah, watermelons, honeydews. Our dark jersey this year, I think, have like a watermelon design. So yeah, maybe the watermelon emoji is the way to go. But yeah, we'll do some research, see if we can find some hard boiled watermelons out there.
Look, you can capture the attention of the community with a great social media presence, and I'm sure there's gonna be a lot of people rooting. Like, people love underdogs, and so there's definitely gonna be a lot of people rooting for, especially a team that's located close to home.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you're gonna have some fan support out there.
Yeah, I think I was reading through, like, we have like alumni chats right after the game to go, and everyone was like, oh, like, I'm already planning my trip to Cincinnati. I think we've got a big crew of alumni who are going to be there. And given that Pittsburgh is so close to Cincy, I think that a lot of the like current men's players and alumni who live in Pittsburgh are going to take the like 4.5-hour drive to get to Cincinnati. So that should be super fun as well.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, both of you, for being here. Much good luck to you at the college championships, and we'll see you in just over a week.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
Yeah, thanks again.
Rosa Vitiello and Sarah Liang with us here on Deep Look. That is going to do it for this week's show. Thank you so much for tuning in. Our 2023 D1 College Championships live preview show will be next week. We're going to do it live in the Discord for all of our subscribers, so make sure you get your subscription now. And of course, it'll be up for everybody in the main feed after that. Thank you so much, Sarah and Rosa. For Keith Rayner, I'm Charlie Eisenhood saying so long, and we'll talk to you next week right here on Deep Look.